I like to watch five, seated comfortably.
Be comfy for the evening ahead. Xena is the princess of power and adventure after the news. With Martin.
I'm gutted.
Tonight on 5 News, Prescott storms out of the summit on global warming. It's 10 to 8, I'm Martin Popple. While the Deputy Prime Minister John Prescott vented his fury at the failure of world powers to agree to a cut in pollution. Also in the programme, bereaved relatives welcome an inquiry into the deaths of premature babies after a controversial operation. Plus, England's striking rugby players. They don't walk out, but also don't walk over Argentina. And surprise, surprise, the Aussies help themselves to another world crown in rugby league. The Deputy Prime Minister, John Prescott, says he's gutted after storming out of the Environment Summit in The Hague. The meeting was supposed to save the world from global warming, but collapsed in tatters. Mr. Prescott, who was once famously dubbed Two Jacks for his love of gas-guzzling cars, said he was personally very disappointed at the failure to agree a cut in pollution. As Philip Ray-Smith reports, talks broke down in a bitter confrontation between Britain, Europe and America.
It's your deal. There isn't a deal, and that's unfortunate because people wanted the deal. But that's life, we get on with the job.
So there won't be a deal?
There's no deal, it's closed down.
You are disappointed? What are your own personal feelings?
I'm gutted.
John Prescott's on his way home from The Hague and he's clearly disappointed. He walked out of international talks on the threat of climate change when it became clear the meeting wasn't going to reach an agreement. The Americans insisted that if they planted trees elsewhere in the world to soak up polluting gases, they wouldn't have to cut down their own emissions. But environmentalists accused the US of trying to wriggle out of the polluter pays principle. After a long night of negotiations, there were high hopes that the US and Europe had finally reached an agreement. But despite an American compromise, the talks finally collapsed over a split in the European delegation. It was too much for Mr. Prescott, who'd been acting as a broker between the two sides.
The world needs Kyoto, it needs the deal, and people have got to keep on doing everything they can to get it. Most people want that. They see the challenges to our climate and the consequences, and I shall keep on trying.
Environmentalists who are protesting outside the World Climate Change Conference say the failure of the talks is nothing short of a disaster.
I'm incredibly angry, I'm incredibly sad. I have already cried, now the anger prevails. I think this is an absolute disaster for the climate, it's a disaster for millions of people.
So the protests continue, and for now, so does the global warming. Changing weather patterns are wreaking havoc around the world, and the next attempt to make a deal on cutting greenhouse gases won't be until next May. Philip Ray-Smith, 5 News.
Bereaved parents have welcomed a government inquiry into premature babies dying from a controversial operation. It involves a tube being inserted into the heart. But the company which makes the tube says this mustn't be done. 5's Catherine Jones reports.
The tiny bodies of premature babies are routinely fed vital nutrients using a thin tube or catheter. In the US, doctors follow guidelines from the catheter's manufacturers, threading it into a vein near the baby's heart. But over here, some paediatricians put the line right into the heart itself. That's how James Ashworth was fed after having surgery on the day he was born. 6 days later, he was dead.
At first, it was just total disbelief. You just couldn't believe that. To us, by then, he was a healthy baby. Just couldn't believe that that could happen.
James died at St Mary's in Manchester, and following 2 similar deaths at the Royal Oldham and at Stepping Hill in Stockport, all 3 hospitals are now under investigation. In fact, the procedure is used at hospitals all over the country. Here at Great Ormond Street, it's been done 450 times in the last 15 months. And the doctors here say they prefer not to follow the manufacturer's guidelines about leaving the tube just outside the baby's heart, because they found in practice that itself causes dangerous complications. That's a view also held by many other experts in paediatric medicine.
The evidence for where it should go is by no means clear-cut. Although the American recommendations are not to place it inside the heart, there are quite a lot of papers that suggest if you leave the tip of the line just outside the heart, the number of clot or thrombus complications starts to go up.
Even so, the Department of Health has now launched this immediate inquiry to check whether babies have been getting the best care possible. Catherine Jones, 5 News.
More stories on the move now, and the British and Irish governments have requested that the United States place the real IRA on a register of banned terrorist groups. The move could help to end American fundraising efforts for the Republican splinter group. The real IRA was behind the Omar bombing in 1998, which killed 29 people. Germany is calling for BSE tests to begin on all cattle in Europe and on beef imported into the EU. German ministers and scientists have met for crisis talks after 2 cases of mad cow disease were found for the first time. The government's committed itself to banning meat-based animal feed. The Deputy Chief Inspector of Railways has dismissed claims that speed restrictions are making the network more dangerous. Railtrack is carrying out yet another mass programme of repairs this weekend, bringing long delays for frustrated customers. Now, Lee is here, and he's got a bundle of sports news, haven't you, Lee?
Martin, thank you very much. Paul Ince could well have saved Brian Robson's job as Middlesbrough manager. The former England international scored an 89th minute equaliser as Borough came from 2 goals down to draw 2-2 at home to bottom club Bradford City. Another 3 points for Manchester United today. Once again, it was Teddy Sheringham who broke the deadlock in their 3-0 win at Derby. And it was a good day at the office for Les Ferdinand. He grabbed a hat-trick as Tottenham beat Leicester 3-0 at White Hart Lane. There were 5 other matches in the Premiership this afternoon. Here are the results. Charlton lost at home to Sunderland by 1-0. It was Coventry 1, Aston Villa 1. Everton came from behind to beat Chelsea 2-1. Another win for Ipswich, 3-2 at Manchester City today. And West Ham also won 3-2 at Southampton. Manchester United have extended their lead at the top to 8 points. Arsenal play at Leeds tomorrow with the Yorkshire club's record signing Rio Ferdinand expected to appear at Ellen Road. As for Ipswich, they are up into 3rd place after that win today. Leicester down to 4th, Liverpool 5th. They play at Newcastle tomorrow. Bradford would have pulled level with Middlesbrough at the bottom if they'd held on for victory at the Riverside Stadium today. As it is, there is absolutely no change of position in the bottom 6. In the First Division, the key match between Watford and Burnley was called off at the last moment because of wet conditions, and that gave Fulham the chance to extend their lead at the top, which they took with a 2-1 win over Grimsby. The winning goal for Fulham scored by Louis Saha, who is the top scorer in the country with 18 goals. The victory means Mohamed Al Fayed's club have won 15 of their 19 games in Division 1 this season and are looking increasingly likely to book a place in the Premiership. Fulham are now 9 points clear of Watford. Birmingham are up into 3rd place after a 2-1 win over Huddersfield. West Brom are 4th after beating Preston 3-1 with another hat-trick from hotshot Lee Hughes. Bolton are down to 5th after a 1-0 defeat at Sheffield United. In Scotland, the Rangers v Celtic derby takes place at Ibrox tomorrow, but here are today's 5 results. It was Aberdeen 3, Motherwell 3. Dundee United 3, Dunfermline 2, Hearts 3, Dundee 1, Kilmarnock 0, St Johnstone 2 and St Mirren drew 1-1 with Hibernian. So just 1 point for Hibs, but they've closed the gap on Celtic to 7 points. And Rangers simply have to win at Ibrox tomorrow with £12 million man Tore Andre Flo poised to make his debut. After a week when rugby union was almost brought to its knees by the England team's threat of strike action, today attention returned to action on the pitch. England played Argentina at Twickenham and they won the game by 19 points to 0. Here's 5's Andy Richardson.
Thankfully, this was the only walkout the England players went through with today. Jason Leonard leading the side out against Argentina to celebrate becoming England's most capped player on his 86th appearance. And the Twickenham crowd were in forgiving mood with the players who'd brought the game to the brink this week. On a rain-swept day, there was little quality play on show, England relying on the boot of Johnny Wilkinson to edge them 9-0 ahead during a disappointing first half. In the second period, Wilkinson was against the 4 as he played winger Ben Cohen in for the game's only try. This just the type of strike the rugby faithful pay their money for. Coach Clive Woodward's muted reaction in keeping with his side's overall display. A physical Argentina side did begin to tire towards the end, but England were still unable to take the Pumas apart. The aftermath of what their coach had called the worst week in